Thank you, Chandan, and good morning, everyone. Hiren Dossani. To briefly introduce myself, I currently work as a senior AWS architect at PwC Canada, and my work usually deals with cyber security, like cloud security, clients, and regulations that I deal with, and how to automate them in the cloud environment. Because currently, all the compliance checks are happening manually, and the ask is how can we use AI to prevent this manual checks or to expedite the efforts in making sure that our cloud environment is compliant with the regulations. Um, to go back in time, like I started my journey in IT since 2000, but honestly, although I graduated way earlier than that, but continued learning. So if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you will see that year over year, I've continuously upgraded myself in terms of certifications, diplomas, and whatnot. Because once you are in IT, it's a never-ending journey, right? You continuously keep upgrading yourself, and started dealing with cloud since although I created my first bucket in AWS S3 in 2005, but actively started working on AWS since 2017, and currently that's my specialty. Cloud security in AWS, migration, modernization. Even I was training for AWS certification and training. So if any of you is looking for that, please reach out to me because I have taught majority of the courses which people want to learn and get certified in. And nowadays, dealing with, as I said, public sector, cloud security. So on that note, let's move forward. Then can you please, when it comes to threat investigations in the cloud environment. But before we go that far, let me start with the basics because while dealing with majority of our clients and folks whom I talk with, the basics are missing completely. And as a result, what happens is there are many false expectations because there are certain areas where you can never use AI. It has to be manual processes because, as you see on the slide, security involves lots of things, not just the cybersecurity, right? And as a result, what happens is when you go for the compliance, you have to take care of holistic view, not just one piece of the puzzle. So we'll talk about the security fundamentals and what are the security objectives, like especially from the CIA triad, like confidentiality, integrity, availability, and what are we solving at the end of the day when we talk about using AI for cybersecurity or security in general? What are we taking care of? What are our assets? What are the threats? What are the weaknesses that we have? So we'll talk about all those things. And then we'll look into how AI can be used in managing your risk, protecting your assets, and how you get started. Because the problem is, okay, we have all the knowledge. Where do I start from? So we'll look into those areas as well. And finally, I will show you the AI Sentry tool demo and talk about its features and benefits. So going back to security fundamentals, uh, of all the security fundamentals, for those of you who can see the screen, tell me which one is the number one priority. Let's make it interactive, folks. We have so many areas here. Cybersecurity is one of them when it comes to security fundamentals. Then there is privacy. So you don't want your credit card number, your health check, your health records to be available publicly. And there is a physical security, and there is a business continuity. Like, okay, what happens if business you are under attack, ransomware? Can you recover from it? Operational security, right? Business processes are now automated. Everything is on like digital platform. And personal security, right? Security of your employees, security of yourself. What do you think is the most important thing in here? Anyone wants to take a stab?
I'll say physical security. That is the most important. I want to feel safe.
Yeah, yeah.
I I would definitely say all of them are important.
Super. So all answers are right. And the most important security is the personal security, right? If you cannot provide security to your personal, then what's the use, right? If I feel scared to go to work, then there's no point. And of course, it sometimes say like physical security. And as a matter of fact, everything is important, right? So as Purnima said, starting, it all starts with personal security, and then you like basically make sure that you are covered from all the angles. For the scope of today's talk, we are going to talk about cybersecurity. So, what is cybersecurity? Right? What is your understanding of cybersecurity? Especially now, you know that there are different buckets, like privacy is different, physical security is different, business continuity is different, operational security. So, cybersecurity, in the most simple terms, you are protecting your digital assets. It could be your systems, subsystems, data that is digitized. And how do you protect your digital information? That's what cybersecurity is all about. And when we talk about the compliances against different regulations and standards, yes, it's heavy on cybersecurity, like more than a half of the importance is given to cybersecurity because many a times there's no physical security, right? When you are in the cloud, you are looking in the shared security model. It's a security in the cloud and security of the cloud. And our scope when we go to cloud is security in the cloud. So we don't deal with the physical security because now we as consumers, we only deal with security in the cloud. Security of the cloud is taken care of by your cloud service provider. Yes, Purnima, you have a question?
Yeah, if we can elaborate a little bit on personal security, like say you made a statement saying, "Oh, I need to go to work and I need to feel safe." So, in
Mhm.
my mind, that is more related to BCP. The objective of BCP is to make sure that your personal is feeling safe, and then you're keeping, there's no threat to their life, and you're protecting them.
Yeah.
But today's focus is, how is security is more narrowed around, say, if you tell me about how you have to protect your weakest link, could be your people, not necessarily the technology, because they don't know, because they can be vulnerable to the social engineering and some of the other
Yeah.
phishing scams. So they are
Mhm.
the people
Mhm.
are the weakest links in the
Mhm.
cybersecurity standpoint. So you're saying that
Mhm.
when you say personal security, is it more
Mhm.
from that perspective, or I want you to elaborate when you say personal security is the most
So,
top priority?
yeah. So imagine you are working for Manulife, right?
Yeah,
Whose responsibility it is to make sure that you feel secure going to your office?
it's the organization's responsibility.
Fantastic. Exactly. Exactly. So your organization is taking utmost care that you feel secure to come to work, right?
Agreed.
And that's what I meant by personal security. Because if you don't feel secure, you will never go in person to work. And when I say we are looking at the security fundamentals, we have to holistically keep in mind all these angles that you see on screen. Cybersecurity is just one aspect to it. Our focus as part of our day-to-day work, yes, it's cybersecurity. But then we are a part of a bigger group where the additional things are taken care of by different teams, right? So our focus, like of course, our focus is cybersecurity, but it doesn't mean that we are compromising any other areas of the security that we see here. Like if personal security is compromised, then what is the point of keeping your cybersecurity like or digital assets secure when people don't feel secure, right? That's what the message of this slide is, that security is a holistic view. And when we talk of even compliances, be it cloud compliances even, all these things are already factored in. And as a result, what happens is people ask me, I have a requirement for protected B, which is the Canadian compliance for when it comes to cybersecurity, or say FedRAMP, which is US based. Can you automate this using AI? 100%. Now, I can't, because there are certain areas of the compliance which deals with physical security, which deals with personal security, which is different from cybersecurity, privacy, and other areas, right? So the focus when we solve, or when we present the problems related with, like how we solve security problems related with AI, if I tell that, hey, write me a check and I will keep you secure, that's a lie, right? Because it never happens that way. It never works that way. So the scope is only, we are talking applications of AI in cybersecurity, which is a part of the security, not the all the security. Cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions, folks? So now you know what the different areas of security are, and keeping cybersecurity in focus, let's move ahead. Now, when we talk of cybersecurity, what I am concerned with, what are my objectives when I say that, yes, you are attested, like you are assured of meeting cybersecurity objectives. What is that assurance? That assurance comes from three areas: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality deals with your private information shouldn't fall in false hands, right? You don't want any malicious users to take undue advantage of your personal data, which can do damage to you, which can do damage to your organization, not only from the financial point of view, but also from the reputation point of view. So any data that goes in the hands of a malicious user, unauthorized users, which can cause harm or damage, then we are talking about confidentiality. And in the most simplest terms, which all of you must have been dealing with, how do you take care of confidentiality? Now, when you let me give you the simplest example. When you key in your password on the browser, usually we don't see the plain text character, right? We see the asterisk or any other characters, right? But we never see the plain text data. And when the information is transmitted from the browser to the server, it goes in the encrypted format, right? HTTPS, which is protection of data in transit. And whenever the data is stored in databases or any other, be it the relational database or object store or file storage, the data is usually in the encrypted format so that nobody can see that encrypted data. In a nutshell, the way to address confidentiality is encryption, where we convert the plain text data into a gibberish data which nobody can decipher unless they have a private key, which only you and you have. Cool? So that's how we address confidentiality. Anybody else wants to comment on that about confidentiality? How would you protect your data so that it doesn't fall in the wrong hands?
I think the primary thing is who is the owner of data and access to that data. So the access control
Yes.
and the business reason for having
Yes.
that access to that
Yeah.
data is the primary
Yes.
control
Exactly.
that I have seen.
Yeah.
And obviously your
Yes.
technical, like say you have your cryptographic standards that will be
Yeah.
implemented
Yeah. Yes.
to protect your data at rest as well as in transit. And you look at all different
Yes.
layers of technology. You look at the application level, you look at the network level, and also your database, how your data is protected. So that's in my mind is how I
Yes.
apply my security
Yes.
hat.
Exactly. And that's a spot on, because encryption it comes the last part is encryption, but security is about defense in depth. It starts with who has access to the data, and you as data owner decide who can access the data. It can be either a read-only data, it can be somebody can overwrite the data. So yes, there are access patterns, and for that we have role-based access, we have attributes. Data owner will have a different permissions compared to data users and data consumers, right? So very good, Purnima. It's all starts with who can access my data, and then how can I protect it from, if at all, the access falls in the wrong hands. Moving forward, integrity. You expect your data to be in the same, you expect the data to be in the same manner as you expected, right? As for example, say for instance, banking transactions, right? You withdraw money from one account and it doesn't get deposited in the second account. Uh-oh, we have data integrity problem. Money is lost somewhere in between, right? That's a serious flaw as well. So I will make sure that my data integrity is always guaranteed, right? There are certain assurances around that, which guarantees like integrity of the data so that you never lose the data. It's always in the format that you expected. If it's different, again, it's a flaw. And there are ways and means to handle integrity. From the technical point of view, again, checksums, right? You can always verify the integrity of your data using checksums. And of course, at a higher level, it all starts with who can access my data, right? If the data falls in the wrong hands, somebody's going to change your data. And when you use it, you will match the checksum. It's going to be different. You will immediately realize that, hey, data has been changed and that change was not authorized. So ways and means to handle integrity as well. And lastly, availability. Is everything is there? Yes, I'm confidential, integrity is taken care of, but then there are no, like, availability is completely missing. So what is the usage, right? If your data is cannot be used at all, then what is the point of doing all these things? So making sure that data is confidential, integrity is assured, you have to make it available as well. And then it all starts, right? Okay, how can we provide defense in depth when the data becomes available and take care of confidentiality and integrity? That's your journey of the data. One simple example, but this from the cybersecurity triads, CIA triad is what people aim for: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Cool. So why are we protecting all these things, right? Well, it can fall in wrong hands. It can do me a damage. So damage to what? Damage to your reputation, damage to your organization. It can be financial damage, and it can be data being sold, your password being available on the dark web and whatnot, right? So in order to identify where to apply this CIA triad, you have to identify what are your most important assets. Your public information, basically you have LinkedIn profile, you have Facebook profile, you have profile across social media. Most of the information is public, right? But it's still your asset. And then when somebody wants to know more about you, well, then you will allow the person, meaning you will now connect with the person. And as we were talking in earlier, let's meet for the meetup, in person, virtual. So basically what you are doing is implicitly you are granting the consent, right? But you are still protecting your asset. So asset is identify what's most important to you, or what's more important from the organization point of view that you want to protect, right? If you are in business, like imagine your recipe, like imagine the recipe of Coke, right? If that falls in wrong hands, then we have everybody will start selling Coke. So that's your most important asset. Identification of the assets is the key to managing the risk. And many a times, people, we have to make sure that they understand the importance of that assets. Assets are basically, it can be an operation, it can be a data, it can be anything that can cause a damage if it falls in the wrong hands. And these assets are constantly under the threat. Why? Because there are weaknesses, there are vulnerabilities which needs to be taken care of. And taking care of assets from what are the threats and what are the weaknesses we have, that whole idea is risk management. So I have identified my assets, I know what the threats are, I know what the weaknesses are, and then what I'm doing about it, that's all about risk management. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, Hiren, I think you bringing in a wonderful concept. And one of the thing from the technology risk standpoint, the first thing is you look at your, having an inventory, having an asset inventory. So today you look at your crown jewel applications, your mission critical applications, then you'll say what are the underlying, if those are really supporting critical operations, and, those considered to be like an asset. And it also has, you know, whether it brings in revenue, what's the biggest impact that will have if it falls down, like say it comes down. But I also want to listen to your perspective on the people. Do you also, I've seen in the traditional very regular that, we are looking at, oh, what are my assets? These are your technology assets, which goes into CMDB. What about who is looking at the people as an asset, and what kind of controls and security or risk assessments done on those critical people?
Yeah. Wonderful question. Excellent. So let me tell you, uh, majority of the security incident starts with the people. Who are your assets, right? You are the number one asset to your organization because you produce value for your organization. And how you act impacts not only you, but your entire organization, the safety of your organization, and safety of your other employees. And utmost importance is equally given to people, what they can do, what they cannot do, and educating the people. It comes from the leadership. What is the mindset? People usually they start from technology, but the problem is most of the security incidents breaches start from the people. People may have forgotten to, you know, go through the entire checklist that they have been provided. People click on the phishing link. People are dealing with the corporate data from their devices. So paying attention to people for and to handle that, most important thing is educating them. And that starts with the training, right? Training which is catered to the role, catered based on the role of the individual within an organization, right? And that's a very, very important thing because yes, from the operations point of view, from the cloud security point of view, you have everything covered. You can automate those things, the actions. But what about from the people point of view, right? So everybody working in an organization will have an identity, right? Especially in the cloud environment, anything that we do in the cloud, every entity has an identity. And that identity should have the role. Role meaning what can a person do? So if a person who shouldn't is not the data owner, right? He's just the data user, data consumer, data processor. What they can do differently from the data owner, right? So classifying your people based on the roles and who has access to what. It all boils down to who can do what. And there is a serious mapping based on the roles of the individual. And then, so you have a subject on one side and you have an object on one side. Subject are your people, objects are your assets. And then you have to do a mapping based on what they can do. So this is known as identification, like basically authentication and authorization. And why? Because you want somebody to be accountable at the end of the day. It doesn't only end with the authentication and authorization, but hey, something wrong happened. Some Purnima had Hiren's account. how can I trace it? And then held, sorry, Purnima, just held
No, I'm
Purnima.
not a threat actor. I can tell you very clearly. I can openly disclose everything. I have some bills to pay. I'm happy to give the bills also to you.
So just for
I'm
the
not a
example,
national security threat to anyone.
the thing is, uh, somebody has to be held accountable, and that's where the people, when the people know that, hey, eh, their actions are being monitored, they have access to certain areas, they don't have access to certain. If somebody gives me unwanted access, I'm gonna use it, right? Doesn't matter, it's not useful to me. So couple of things that organization always keep in mind is principle of least privilege. Don't give undue permissions to people if they don't need it for, and right to know. So if you feel like as a part of your job you don't need to access certain areas, then you don't give access to those people. And it starts with these two principles: the principle of least privilege and right to know basis, right? Like, and once you have that categorization, classification of your assets, the roles of the people, principle of least privilege, that area can be addressed. But let's not forget about educating and training your users about what the security implications are, and even having game days, right? Many a times in your organization, you guys receive fake emails, right? Which is nothing but a phishing test. So those kind of activities, it definitely helps to improve the security posture within our organization.
So it's also about the background checks, right? I mean, the malicious
Yes,
actors,
it's yes, yes, 100%. It like anything, like even when we are hired, right? We use rigorous background checks, verifications. So that's also a part of managing the risk, especially related with the people. Yes, and even to add to that, many a times the okay, this is hiring, but what if, like, let me tell you one recent example. You won't believe. A mortgage-based company dealing with billions of dollars, they came up to us and they say, hey, some of their employees who are not a part of the organization still have access to their cloud environment. And the CEO guy has no idea about who is like accessing. He's not technical, right? He's a root user. He has no idea about what the admin users are, but he saw that my bill has increased from few $100s to several $100,000. And I had to take an action, and I was given only 30 minutes. So imagine accessing the cloud environment using root user, which is a severe no-no, but then there is no other way because the owner of the organization doesn't know about who the admin users are. People are gone and they are still having access. So this is also a part of the security where disgruntled employees are accessing the environment. So not only the background check, but once they are done, we should also be done with their permissions straight away, right? Many a times you must have noticed, like you are done like Friday, yesterday, so many people were laid off from many consulting organizations, and their access were done like 5:01 p.m., right? This is very important because otherwise they can send a wrong email. They can send email to customers, clients, which can be damaging their reputation. They can access a cloud environment, do something funky, again, cost millions of dollars to your organization. It can be a ransomware. So besides, on top of the background checks and everything, making sure that people don't have access once they are no more a part of the organization is equally important.
I
Cool.
agree. And it's so unpredictable to have somebody's emotions and motives
Exactly. Yes.
checked. And you
Yes.
can't put resources every time, right? You can't have a scanner on them every time that you don't have
True.
so much of budget
Yes.
and monitoring so many people. So your perimeters are secured. I think access management seems to be a very critical control,
Yes.
onboarding and
Yes.
offboarding.
Yes. Yes. Very important. And gray areas in this, all these things that you mentioned, that contribute significantly to the security breaches that are happening. Because, you know, from the cloud security point of view, if you go and tell AWS or Google or Azure that, hey, your encryption algorithm is flawed, there are very minute chances that you will win the case against them. Millions of customers, they are dealing with lot many people than we do, and they have taken care of everything. But it's the how to use the cloud, how to use the controls. And that's where people, educating your people, training your people, and providing the policies, governance is extremely important. Because once you have solid steering committee that takes care of the governance, that takes care of the people, yes, there are very, very good chances that you will have a very good cybersecurity posture. Okay, cool. Now, how can you use AI? AI also brings its own security problems, right? But now when you know what you are protecting, what are your assets, what are the threats, what is your blast radius, what are the weaknesses you have, right? Okay, I have, from technical point of view, I have port 80 open, which is allowing everybody to, access my website and allowing access to people from the back end using SSH, same on the port 80. That's a risk, right? It needs to be protected. It should have been caught as part of your testing, pen testing, or your compliance reporting. Fine. So many areas in the risk management, it can be automated, right? Because yeah, people, you give a checklist to people, not necessarily people are going to follow the same checklist 200 times, 20,000 times in a year. So there are certain areas which can be automated. And I will show it in the demo as well. How can we start using AI and get used to it, right? It makes you more efficient because those processes which are automated, which human beings tend to lose efficiency, especially when they do it repeatedly over the course of job. It's fatigue may cause something or whatever might be the reason. So in those cases, AI will help in making sure that there is no such things which is taken care of manually. Everything is automated, and the results are fairly promising as well. Yes, AI does bring its own security issues, but then there is a different process to deal with it. It's a completely different process about what is the lineage about this particular model that I'm using, on what data it was used, on what in which country, what is the bias, right? Can the LLM explain me why it took a certain decision, right? So all those things, if as long as there is a governance, there are principles around usage of your LLM models, and if you are taking care of it, well and good. But if you are not, then you are introducing more security like issue. So organizations are not just jumping into AI, especially those organizations which are prudent about introducing any new technology, especially public sector, right? Public sector, like if you introduce something, even financial services, not everybody will jump on the bandwagon of AI straight away. They want the technology to be robust. And let's prove it grows on its own, how people are dealing with it, what are the issues it can have, and then people are working on how do we fix it. So AI, one model is doing something, another model is watching it. So there are ways of improving your security posture using AI without even getting worried or too much worried about what additional security concerns it may bring in. But again, it boils down to the maturity of the organization when it comes to adopting the newer technologies. Yes.
Hiren, I think, can you elaborate a little bit on different LLM AI models and underlying architecture? If there is a difference in the architecture, let's say, of a predictive AI versus a generative AI, and now you're saying agentic AI. So, does the
Mhm.
underlying architecture the same, or is it different?
Anil, I won't be the best person to talk about the underlying architecture of LLMs, but as far as I know, they are mostly the same. It's the data that changes. The training, when it comes to the training of the model or the inference of the model, those processes are mostly the same, and only one organization is a has a monopoly in it, like monopoly in the sense 80-90% of training and inference is done by NVIDIA. Nowadays, organizations do have their own LLMs, and we will look into the different LLMs when I show you the model. But at the broader concept, the process is same. It's the data on which data a particular LLM is uh, trained. That can be the differentiator.
And then you came out of the mute. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, so I just want to add that so
Right.
both whatever you said, these are all same. They just fancy marketing names. So as you mentioned, like LLM, so large language model, right? So it is a class of model which was developed using Google's transformer model. So Google released the transformer in 2018, and pretty much all this started. And even before 20, when ChatGPT was launched, AI used to be called neural net, which was again another Google invention. So before that, statistical neural net based model used to call AI, and now these transformer based large language models are called AI. In reality, none of them are AI. They are just predicting the next character. This is basically all it's doing. So large language model, its complexity is so good that it can take a larger context, not only a context of a word, not only context of a sentence, it can take a context of a whole, I would say, paragraph or on. And that is how the context window they keep talking about, right? As the GPU memory is increasing, they're able to take larger and larger context and predict the next word or character. So that's what it is. All the models, they are doing some or other kind of prediction. Even if you write a statistical linear model, ARIMA model, random boost, like a gradient boosting, any model you do, they're all doing some kind of prediction. What is the next value, whether it's 1 or 0? So, so the classification that you mentioned, that predict, all are predict, everything is predicted. That is one. And then again, if you go to the basics of machine learning, basically based on the what type of data you're using, that also changes. You're talking about linear regression based model or other based model. And agentic AI is a application development design pattern, which mean you take a REST API and a small language model LLM and club them together and to ask it to do one thing, which is example, hey, I will give you English or a language, you give me a SQL code. I'll give you English, you give me a Python code. So that is what they are doing. So basically, assume it's like, we used to play some relay race. I do something and I give it a baton to you, you take it and you do something else, you do something else. So agent means you give one REST API, one task, it does something, output of it becomes input for you. So if you use any tools like ServiceNow, Jira, or any workflow management solution, it is basically a more advanced automated version of it. Of course, agentic AI sounds very cool, and that's what all attention is.
So, Chandan, if I'm hearing the purpose of each of those models a little, for example, is a predictive. It's predicting because you have a large set of data. It can predict the next text or character or image.
Character.
So it works with the lot data. It doesn't apply any rational. It's more about what data you give. It analyzes it, synthesizes it, and it predicts, okay, the next one could be this. When it comes to a generative AI, it's again a large, huge set of data, and
Yeah.
then it gives you more of it can give you advanced level of analysis and information, and then say, okay, I can do this also, but again it depends on the underlying models or data. Now the third one is the agentic AI. Now in my mind, this it serves a different purpose. It talks about it's not just taking the data, but it is also collaborative. It's also giving understanding in that entire context, saying, okay, now I have to go and collaborate or with another person in another department for some information. But it's also going in that context, it's also applying the context to collaborate and do that, perform that particular work. So this in my understanding is that this purpose of each of this AI, for lack of different term, but I know it's a fancy word, whatever it is, different perception. But AI is different, so your underlying architecture should also be different. So I just want to, if you understand the underlying architecture and how the data flows and all, so while the controls, the security posture or the controls would be the same, we still talk about encryption, we're still talking about logging and monitoring, you're still talking about your end EDM and your other kind of controls, cryptographic controls that you might put in place. But I would say how the model is being used and what are the threat vectors that can come in these models might vary. That is my understanding, and it is just an opinion, not that you can correct me as well.
No, that's correct. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point, and thanks, Chandran, for helping. But every model, as you said, Purnima, uh, will behave differently, and we will soon see the difference, right? And tracing why it does what it does, I think I haven't looked at it yet, but it will be a great idea to look at the release notes of the model. If the if the organizations who are creating this model, if they reveal that information about why it reached a certain decision, that will be very helpful. There is certain information which is public, but there is lots of information which is not disclosed. But at least going to the public information of different models will definitely help to get closer to why it took certain decision, why one instead of two, and so on and so forth. So checking out that will be a great start for understanding the architecture beneath each of this model. Cool. Let's proceed further. Now, when it comes to assets, where would you start from? Like basically, you have to identify your assets. Once you identify your assets, you have to protect your assets, right? And if anything is going wrong, then you have to have a mechanism in place which can detect it. And once you detect there is, yes, the asset is under a threat, you have to respond to that threat. And if the threat did any damage, then you have to recover from it. No different from putting a lock on the door. Everybody lock your home, your office, your drawers, right? Why are you locking your door when you go to bed at night? We make sure that all the doors are closed, like be it front end or back end. Like, why are we doing it? We do it every day because we are protecting our house, right? Our home. So assets have already been identified. Your home is your asset. You're trying to protect it by putting doors. Putting a door may not be enough, so you put locks on the door, and then you have monitoring system, right? Monitoring system is nothing but your detective. You have cameras. Cameras. When people ring the bell, yeah, you will see them on the camera. If they are not the person whom you want to let them in the house, you are not going to open the door. So you have identifier assets. You have put the ways and means to protect it, ways and means to detect if anything goes wrong, and if anything goes wrong, then you must have a ways and means to respond to it, right? Even after you have ways and means to respond to it, there can be a delay. Like, okay, security system. Recently, one of my friend, real life example, folks, lives in Woodbridge, had a Rogers security system, and the intruders they uh, broke the house, broke the door, the backyard door, came in, and at the gunpoint robbed him. And the security system then called him after 5 minutes. Well, it's game over, right? Police came, everybody came, entire neighborhood came, but the intruders, they did their job. The response mechanism was there, but there was a delay in few minutes. So again, the point is, do you have real time response mechanism? Because at the end of the day, you cannot prevent security incidents 100%. All we are trying to do is delay so that the intruder, it takes time for the intruder to get in. And in that delay, you will have your response mechanism kicking in. Fine. It was not a real time response. Damage has been done. How do you recover from it? Right. So people pay maximum attention to protection and response. And minimum attention is being given, as based on what I have learned, to recovery. You have a ransomware attack. You have imagine your business is highly successful today in the Canadian region, and you are doing online business. Imagine Amazon.ca, right? If Amazon.ca, and it does happen, if availability zone or something goes down, what are the ways and means to recover from it, right? Simple things can be, you have a backup data where you can restore all the operations within a few hours. But again, you cannot afford your business to be down for a few hours. Like imagine Amazon.ca is down for by few hours. Imagine the damage it will cause in terms of revenue. So do you have a active mechanism where one thing goes down, the other kicks in near real time? These are the different pros and cons. We have to identify how quickly you recover from the damage. And this is how basically, once you have all these things in place, like you have identified, protected your resources, you have detection mechanism, response, and recover, then you can make sure that your business processes are not impacted by the security incidents. There will be security incidents, but you have to plan for the failure. If you don't plan for the failure, you are planning for failure, right? And that's why having that objective of recovering your business from the security is of prime importance. And what I have learned is that's the gray area. That's where the people spend maximum time in. And that's where the demo I will be showing you about investigating threats and how we can recover quickly from it. Any questions, folks? Okay. So the security sentry tool that we have developed, it takes care of how do we make sure that our investigations are fast enough. You won't believe that, again, all my examples will be real, by the way, based on personal experiences. I was talking to one of the CISO of an organization, a large organization, and he was telling me that if he wants to, like, they have infrastructure in the cloud, more than 50 accounts in the cloud, and if he wants to get information about what's going on in the account, what is the security threats, how are we doing from the cloud security posture, what are the user activities going on in my account, he said he has to rely on his security analyst to get back to him with that information. And the delay in getting that information, it can be from minutes to days. And I was like, days? Yes. Because the question is such that the security analyst will have to create a complex query against a data source, which is logging all the information. And then by the time the security analyst comes back, responds to the CISO is like, man, it's like so late, right? So much delay is happening when you have to create complex queries against your different accounts, against different data sources. So As a result of that, what happens is you don't even know, or by the time you know that you have a security threat, an attack already happens, and then you are alerting, or then you are reacting on the security alarm. So security becomes security becomes reactive rather than proactive, right? What's the point? The sole idea of AI or whatever mechanism you have, make sure that your security is measures are proactive, meaning you can take an action before something happens. Majority of the people, they react to the security incidents rather than security being a proactive measure. If you have the security as a proactive measure, definitely you have an edge, right? Because now you can reduce the damage. Now you can act faster, and as a result, your risk management is so robust and efficient rather than always reacting to security alarms. So that's the sole idea. How can we make sure that our security measures are proactive and not reactive? So rather than the security analyst creating complex queries against different data sources and different AWS accounts, can AI help us to generate the query based on the natural language? I ask a question in plain English. Can AI convert that plain English question into a SQL query? And that SQL query then can be used by the security analyst. So the security analyst doesn't have to then deal with the SQL queries at all. They would just uh, enter the prompt in the form of the question that was asked and get the response and send it back to the CISO. This entire time can take few seconds rather than from few hours to few days. And that's what we'll look into the demo. But that's the benefit that we are talking about. And speaking of the architecture for the tool, so when it comes to AWS has Security Lake, and the Security Lake can basically ingest the information from different data sources in the form of your user activities, in the form of your networking activities, in the form of your security compliance. And there are several other data sources, as you see. And you can also bring in external data. So you have on-premises system, you have system with other cloud service providers, and you have also AWS cloud. So when you ingest data in the security lake, it's going to transform the data into the open cybersecurity framework schema. So your now data is in the single schema, no matter from which data source is coming from. And now once the schema is uniform, irrespective of the data source, it becomes easier to generate the queries. So that's the sole idea behind using AI against the security lake. Your data is already ingested in a uniform format. All that ingestion is the heavy lifting of transforming your data into a particular schema is taken care of by your cloud service provider. And you have enabled the ingestion across the different AWS services, as well as with any external data sources that you may have. Now, when your data is centralized, it becomes easier to query the data because you know that it is also in a consistent format. So Security Lake provides us with the centralized information, which not anybody, but those who have access to it can access it and get the much needed security related information. Before we go into the details of the security, let's actually take a look at how the demo looks like, and then I will come back and show you the security or the key architecture components that are being used. Okay. So let me share my screen again. Can everyone see my screen? Security Sentry tool. Assume yes. Everybody can see the screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super. Yeah, super. So here, basically, let me sign in as a CISO user. Speaking of the persona of the user, so the tool allows you to uh, sign in based on like the persona of the user signing in changes the behavior with the way this tool behaves. So let me sign in as a CISO user and see what's the behavior that I'm getting. So since I'm signing in as a C-suite executive, I have the flexibility to change the model for the prompt that I am giving. If I sign in as a tester or a security analyst, then I won't have that flexibility. Also, we are working on changing the responses based on the persona of the user. And for the sake of the demo, as you see, we have two areas where we are interested in to begin with. Like, how about I want to know my security posture from the different compliance and regulations. I want to know the user activities and whatnot. So let's try to fire a question around what are the top two accounts with most security findings. So let's fire this question and see how long. So I'm using the Anthropic cloud model here. And usually what I've noticed is it takes about maximum 20 seconds to get the response. And here you see that it found two accounts with the security findings. Now imagine I, as a CISO user, have to pass this question to the security analyst and he gets back to me. Without this tool in place, it was taking few hours by the time CISO has this information. But now CISO is traveling and he sees this information, then he can send. You can save this information to a PDF file, send the PDF file to those who are responsible. Why the heck we have this many security incidents, right? So here now, these are all the of course development accounts. So I won't be concerned about the numbers. But the idea is you have the information which gives you precisely information about where you stand, right? So rather than now, once I find this many findings, well, I should start taking proactive security measures rather than waiting, because now it's evident that, hey, these two accounts, somebody has to deal with it right away, right? And let's narrow it down to further, like, okay, what are the CIS related compliance incidents? And let's group it by the account ID along with the security, with the severity. And this will also give us information about, okay, here is the account, here is the severity of the incidents. And that way, I can keep zooming down into where I should be focusing on. Because the sole idea of this information is we have this many things going on. Why is nobody taking care of it? We could be well under an attack any time from now. So I want to reduce this information, like this high severity, immediately. And in the next version, you will see that we have also actions being triggered. Currently, it's only taking care of the investigation, but then what's the point of investigation without action? You have to take an action like, okay, I want to trim down this uh, high critical severity incident, right? Then you should trigger the pipeline, which will patch your instances, which will take certain actions based on whatever you may have to do. But this is purely for the investigation. In the next subsequent releases, we'll see that, hey, it's not only just the investigation, but AI can help you to take an action as well. And speaking of that action, where it needs collaboration between different services, that's where the agentic AI comes into play, where agentic AI is about interacting between different agents, where one agent passes on the information to another one looks into it and takes appropriate action, right? So you have multiple agents working hand in hand to solve the problem, right? So this is one domain, like, okay, from the compliance point of view. Another example can be what's happening with the user activities. So let's see about how many users have multi-factor authentication enabled. This is a very, very critical area where the mandate is all your users must have multi-factor authentication. I have worked in enterprises, financial services, enterprises, government sector, public sector, this is not enforced. Right away, it's a vulnerability, a weakness, right? Where you are not enforcing the multi-factor authentication. So here, you know that only 4 users have multi-factor authentication. And if you see your IAM users, like you have 10 users, what are the other people doing, right? And also here, since you have a C-suite executive, you can change the model. Well, let's change the model and see. And this is also relates with the question that were asked. What's the underlying architecture? To be honest, I precisely don't know what the underlying architecture is for different model, although they are from the same family. But the responses that you will see may differ, may not differ. Who knows, right? So again, you will notice that this Sonnet model is taking a little longer, and it gives me information in a much neater way, right? So same prompt, different model, different response. As an organization, what is the mandate? Whom will you believe? What is your governance? All these things one has to consider. So these are the different areas. Of course, it deals a lot with AI, but what we are trying to get it as, how can I expedite threat investigations and be proactive? Especially now I know that this gives me precise information like, okay, the number of users with multi-factor is 0. So this is, it can be good or bad, because good in the sense there are no users created. Everything is a federated access, which is good. Once you have federated access, your external identity provider will take care of MFA. But if you have users created in your cloud service provider, like IAM in AWS, and if you don't find any users with the MFA enabled, good. But especially assuming that, hey, it's federated access. And let's try this Llama model and see the response for the same question. Models or no data, right? So whom would you rely on? And these are the different combinations and different ways to dealing with using AI in an organization. Yes, it helps, but here this model doesn't help. So which model will you choose? Do you know the underlying architecture? How will it train? How can it explain it to me? And what if somebody tries to know the sensitive information? Will AI allow the sensitive information? Let's see. So no, because as an organization, you have provided guardrails, and these guardrails basically prohibit leaking of any sensitive information, irrespective of the model that you choose. So here, if I choose any different model and try to hack or try to know what's the password policy, then obviously it shouldn't reveal the sensitive information. It's going to tell me, sorry, uh, for the cloud haiku, yeah, it's the same thing. Content is prohibited. If somebody wants to know the value of the token, okay, you don't have a password, fine. If I have access to your token, I still can access your account. Again, based on the guardrails that your organization has provided, you can prohibit any sensitive information being leaked. So that's the Sentry tool in a nutshell for you folks. This is where like people like I had started demoing this because this was created based on the feedback that we received from the public sector customers. And the beauty of this is the data there is no external installation, because this public sector, they can spend millions and millions of dollars in installing external applications. But then the problem is, hey, we are allowing external access. We don't know what their executables are doing. So here, it's just created using infrastructure as a code. I can share the Terraform code. You can create this in your environment, and you are in full control. Your data is not leaving your organization, nor any external agents are being installed. It's your environment. It's looking at your environment. It's giving the information about your environment, and it expedites your security measures. So that's the whole idea behind the security-centric tool. And now if we go back, any questions, by the way, before I switch my screen to the architecture components that were used for the demo? Well, assume no questions. Here, as we see that there are 5 accounts in an organization. Usually, there can be a lot more. There can be 50, 150. Maximum I have seen is about 250. But irrespective of the number of accounts, you always have one account where you have security lake enabled, which will centralize your information. So here, your log archive is the account which centralizes the security data from all the different accounts in an organization. And the information, the plain language question, the natural language query was broken down into the different pieces. And then the query was generated based on the knowledge base of a model. And then the agent basically generated the query based on the information it has got. And the query was passed on to the Lambda function, which queries the security lake database using Amazon Athena. So the entire process, which was happening manually without the Bedrock agent in this area, it was happening directly at this level. Directly, people were querying using Amazon Athena, different data sources, different accounts. Now everything is streamlined using AI. So the application, the streamlined application that you saw was running on an EC2 instance, and we were passing on the natural language questions, which was broken down into tokens. Information was grabbed from it. SQL query was generated, and we saw the response coming back. So that was the architecture behind the tool that you saw. We already saw all these questions. And the next steps, as I said earlier, like how can you take actions? Investigations are fine. Can you take actions? Can you integrate external data sources? Or I want to automate checks for compliance. Can we do that? Yes. So all these things can be taken care of. Where imagine you have a compliance check out of 200 checks. If AI can help me to automate even 60, 70%, it will significantly reduce my time to get the approval or the assurance for the compliance. So this was in nutshell, use of AI for cybersecurity measures, especially you are beginning. If you are using sophisticated tools like Palo Alto or tools from other security companies, then you are already sophisticated, you already have sophisticated ways and means, but not organization can afford those tools. It needs training, it needs investment, and it needs external agents being installed. People want to have full control over what they are doing without the data leaving their environment or any external agents being installed on their environment. And this is where homegrown tools, simple using Terraform modules, infrastructure as a code, you can quickly deploy it in your environment and make your security analyst way more efficient and get the responses of the critical questions, which helps them to meet the compliance fairly quickly. AI for cybersecurity. That's all I have got, folks. Any questions?